my pretties. Come in, have a seat as we sip this very sad tea of reality. My name's Autumn,
And I'm Haley.
and today we are going to be talking about.
The harrowing case of Jessica Lunsford.
Do we have a disclaimer?
Trigger warning for miscarriage, child abduction, child abuse, child rape, child molestation, child murder, and being buried alive. I think we forgot to put a trigger warning on that last one. But
There's always a trigger warning, but sometimes an extra trigger warning is necessary.
Yeah.
We just like to cover all our bases. But also, this is what we talk about a lot, and these cases aren't always
if you're listening
light
to a
and
true
fun.
crime podcast, you should just go in knowing
It's not going to be the best, but there are the trigger warnings in case you do like to listen to true crime and those particular subjects trigger you.
So let's get into the meat of it. John Couey is a man of no honor and very little thought. He was brought into this world on August 19th, 1958, to a young mother. He was 2 months early and frail, her second child, and she was only 14 or 15 when she gave birth, and was married to John William Couey, who was 21. It is alleged that the couple were plagued by domestic abuse. This led to Betty Harris leaving when John Jr. was just a year old. He, along with his sister Dorothy, would bounce around with their mother to her parents' house before she would remarry. They would only stay with her for 2 months before moving back to their grandparents' rural farm. Johnny would attend school, being marked as slow and placed in special education classes. He would be teased for this and for his ears that stuck out. His grandparents would go on to say that little Johnny had a hard childhood. He would often be found eating out of garbage cans, being neglected as he was beat and bounced around. He was brought up the hard way, as it was known back then. It is noted that his stepfather, who was known to bully him, and his mother would do a little about it. One time, Body Lindsay, the step-douche, would be alleged to have nearly drowned Johnny in the pond to teach him a lesson, and would often beat him black and blue for any small indiscretion. His mother and stepfather would go on to deny these allegations, saying that they weren't afraid to discipline, but that it was far from abusive. Regardless, the children would be moved to their father's people, where the abuse would continue, so much so that they were quickly bounced again to their aunt's house. Back then, it was commonplace for people to not get involved with family matters, keeping their nose just far enough out of their business to get the dirty details and gossip, but not enough to interfere and possibly stop the abundant child abuse that was happening in this era. Anyway, long story short, John Couey says that he had it rough, and this is why he became the monster that he was.
Excuses.
Always. They always have a fucking excuse. By the age of 19, he was arrested for breaking into the bedroom of a young girl. Hold on, a little out of breath.
You're fine.
Oh. He would put his hand over her mouth as soon as she awoke. But she was a badass and escaped this idiot and ran screaming to her mother, who was also a badass, and called the cops.
Good job. Not like most people sometimes can't avoid that, but
it depends on your
nice.
response.
You got away. You did your damn thing.
She fucking was like, oh hell no. And right there, he should have been locked the fuck up with the key thrown away. Like, you're breaking into somebody's bedroom, touching their child. Like,
yeah,
that's it. There is no first offense.
Yeah, no.
But whatever. He wrote an apology letter to the family for his innocent mischief, and he made sure to include that when he was a boy, he saw many psychiatrists and that they had diagnosed him with a mental disease, so it simply wasn't his fault. He just couldn't help himself.
Okay. I bet that was all lies, too, anyway.
It was. He did not escape justice, but the key definitely wasn't thrown away. He was given 10 years in prison and ordered to be evaluated. His IQ came back as borderline mild retardation. So 2 short years into his sentence, the parole board stupidly let him out on good behavior. Because how can you molest children if you are not around children?
How long was the sentence?
10, and he got out in 2. For good behavior.
Yeah, like, that makes any fucking sense.
It doesn't. Because he's not going to molest big fellows who are, not powerless and prepubescent, but, that is what it is. He would move back in with his mother and stepfather, which was a tenuous situation at best. One evening, he crept into his stepsister's room, allegedly, while she was sleeping soundly. Melody, who was only 5, with her older sister Terry. Terry would wake to find John kissing and caressing Melody's legs. His mother would
Gross.
claim that John meant to rape the little girl and would have had Terry not interrupted his devious plans. So,
why didn't you do anything?
well, they did. The following morning, they would take John to his parole officer in Gainesville, Florida.
Okay.
So they did. He played dumb and said that he didn't intend to hurt the girl, that he was just going to play a game with her like his daddy used to do when he was little. I don't know if that was genuine or if he was just being manipulative.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, of course he was being manipulative, but
how
concocting a story versus
reality?
Actually revealing childhood trauma. I don't know. They did say it was stupid. So the officer didn't make the report, instead choosing to send him off to relatives in Orlando. He was like, you know what, just get away from the kid. But before he left, his mother would disown him, saying, and I quote, "Johnny, you forget you got a mama because your mama is dead." Like, she didn't want nothing to do with him anymore.
Good. Period. She knew. She was like, I gave birth to the fucking devil.
Like,
she fucking knew.
Thanks for doing the favor of releasing him onto the world.
And at
whatever.
least there's so many cases of moms
Oh,
being so enthralled with their boy that he could never do that. My boy, no.
It was her fault. She seduced him.
Yeah, she's just a whore. And, like, that's your daughter, dude. And, yeah, I mean, just, at least she believed her daughters.
It's,
like, she did her damn thing as a mom. I mean, I guarantee there's more she could have done, like, lock his ass up.
Right, press charges, but it is.
Kids away from it.
That is the bottom line. Yeah. So fast forward to 1985, where he marries a single mother named Karen Ghosh. She would soon become pregnant, and Karen gave birth to a baby girl. After about 5 years into their rocky marriage, it was discovered that John was raping her older daughter, and no one called the fucking police. Karen did leave him, though, and a year later he was finally convicted of a sex crime and added to the sex offenders registry. He was found guilty of lewd behavior with a child under the age of 5. She was a neighborhood girl who had lived just down the block from him. So he just can't help himself.
And he's still not locked up for an appropriate amount of time anyway.
No. So. No. But they did add him to a registry.
Like, that fucking does anything.
It does not.
Look, my name's on this list that no one ever checks.
Mm-hmm. Of course, the coward didn't want to face prison time, so he begged for help, looking into a plea deal with the police. Either way, he only spent a few years behind bars. He should have been locked up forever at this point. Come the fuck on.
Bars.
Bars? Did I say bars?
Bars.
Oops. He was locked up behind the bars for, but I mean, this is his second offense with heinous behavior with children.
And they're still not getting it through their head that he needs to be locked
away
forever.
Like, just keep it. That's just it.
Follow through.
What the fuck? I don't give about fucking rights at this point.
Let the one out who was just dealing some marijuana.
Exactly. The things that we prioritize. So he spent a few years behind bars, and he would be paroled, but he disregarded the stipulations of his freedom, skipping the sex offender classes, and eventually disappearing from the authorities' radar altogether.
Exactly. They weren't even fucking watching him.
Exactly.
They don't give a fuck.
Gone in the wind. This is an unfortunate fact, because having a sick fancy for young girls would lead to the horrifying death of Jessica Lunsford.
I'm not saying all police officers either.
No, it's just the system itself.
Yeah. I'm not any derogatory to, like, the man and people. Okay. I don't want to get in trouble. Don't yell at me.
The system is broken. Because this man should have been just stuck behind the fuck bars.
100%. He should not.
Many children could have been spared trauma and murder if they had realized that you cannot rehabilitate people who are attracted to children.
Yep.
Keep them the fuck away. I don't know.
Which are pedophiles, by the way, not fucking
minor attracted people.
Yeah, no, they're fucking pedophiles. Let's get that clean, straight, and to the fucking point. Pedophiles.
Check yourself into a psychiatric.
If you think different, you should report yourself too.
Absolutely.
The
fuck? Do not make excuses.
And you should exit this podcast because we want no affiliation with you. Period. Duh. We can continue.
Jessica Lunsford. She was a beautiful young girl living in North Carolina.
Gorgeous. She was so
I
pretty.
know.
Such a cutie.
I mean, all children are beautiful, but come the fuck on,
She was adorable.
Her parents were Mark and Angela, and she had some older siblings, all teens by the time that she had arrived. She was Angela's rainbow baby. About a year after she was born, her parents would divorce, unfortunately, and Mark would get full custody of Jessica. For the most part, she was an only child growing up, being that her siblings were so much older. They were in and out. She was well loved and a total daddy's girl. They were practically inseparable. Oftentimes, he would even bring Jessica to work with him on the construction sites.
That's so cute.
I know.
That
Little
is
hard
so
hat,
cute.
just sitting there,
Watching Dad
bossing
work.
the big old guys around.
I bet they all loved her too.
Oh, of course. It's so fucking devastating. They said she would just add a gorgeous light to her surroundings, playing and conversing as the clock ticked on.
That's so cute.
I know.
Oh my god. Beautiful
Anyway,
baby.
It's
Beautiful baby. Taken too soon.
oh god,
Well,
girl,
so soon.
you don't even want to get to the end
I
because,
don't.
like, oh
I
my
don't.
god.
I don't. But we're going to.
Eventually, Mark would decide to move closer to his parents to help out with them as they were getting older. This was great news for Jessica as she missed them dearly. So as they traveled on to Florida to be with them, it was a grand old time. Jessica would go out with her grandparents to shop, to play, to evening karaoke.
That's so cute. Ah.
It was beautiful, and I'm so glad that she got to experience such deep and unconditional love.
Yeah.
Like, her life
She
was
was
short, but it
loved.
was full. She was loved.
Yeah.
And just hold on to that as we go.
I'm holding.
I don't even want to do this anymore. Okay. Ouch. All right. Why? Oh. All right. We got to talk about these cases because the babies. So they're down in Florida. She's being loved by her grandparents. Dad's, kicking ass, providing, taking care of everybody.
Doing
They're
the
all
damn
taking care of each
thing.
other, just being a
They
fucking
doing
beautiful family.
the damn thing.
Jessica wanted to be a singer, drawing
Adorable.
inspiration from her two favorite people, or her two favorite musicians, Shania Twain and Pink.
I love those.
Oh my god.
Adorable.
Let's go, girls. Raise your glass.
Let's go, girls.
Jessica had many interests, often dreaming of being a fashion designer and of being an actress. She and her grandma would sew clothes for her dolls to cultivate this desire in her. She was described as outgoing, curious, and affectionate, loving to give hugs and to cuddle. Jessica was a beautiful soul, a daddy's girl ripped from her father's arms much too soon. One fateful night, trigger warning, because here's where we get into the darkness.
Okay.
Jessica was the light, and so trigger warning, fucked up. One fateful night, when Jessica was 9 years old, her father would branch out and go on a date. He was very excited about it as he hadn't dated much since the divorce. He got all dolled up and went out to have a good time, and he did. He even got to stay over at the lovely lady's house. When he came back home the next morning, he would hear Jessica's alarm going off. This was odd, as she would have woken up to it and turned it off unless there was something wrong. Mark made his way to Jessica's room to find it empty. He would wake his parents, asking if they knew where Jessica was. His father would say that he had put her to bed, and he only woke up around 3 a.m. to pee, but he didn't check on her. She's 9.
Yeah.
This is when Mark realized he had forgotten to lock the door when he left last night. He quickly called the police and reported Jessica missing. The cops would come over to investigate and take statements. Mark called every single person he knew to see if they had seen Jessica at all within the last 24 hours, but no one had eyes on her. Of course, the police asked if it was possible that the 9-year-old child ran away with no provisions or knowledge of how to navigate the outside world, completely dependent on the adults in her life, and she just randomly decided that she could fare better on her own. I get that they have to ask if she could possibly have been upset that she didn't get ice cream after dinner and that maybe she ran off on her own.
Yeah.
And somehow the grandparents just went to bed without making sure that she was home because she was 9 or ran away in the middle of the night or whatever. I get that they have to ask, but come the fuck on.
Yeah.
Stop wasting time. But whatever. You got to investigate. I get it. I'm just sad. Mark said that it was dumb to think she would run away, even if it was to see her mother, who had lived hundreds of miles away. If Jessica had wanted to see her mother, she would have asked him to set something up. It also wasn't possible that she got herself caught up in any internet honeypot for pedophiles. She was 9, and the internet was barely older. She didn't have any regular access to it. It was unlikely that she was lured away.
Yeah.
They would go through Jessica's room again to see if there was anything missing or any evidence left behind. Mark would notice that her purple dolphin that he had just won at the fair was gone. This confirmed for the police that Jessica was likely abducted. Because of the nature of the crime, they pulled all of the names from the sex offender registry. This was a double-edged sword. It gave them a place to start looking, but that place was legion. The police department had 208 names to hunt down and question. They would gather information looking for anything suspicious, doing their best to find the girl.
At least they were trying.
They were. Of course, in the meantime, Mark and his father would be persons of interest.
They are, usually.
Yep, you got to look where it starts. They would be grilled on whether or not they knew where Jessica was. Of course they didn't. Neither of them sold her to a human trafficker to settle a drug debt, nor did they have any of their own sadistic intents to victimize their darling Jessica. I see why the cops have to do this, but when you know the outcome of all of this, it does break your heart that they were so lost and angry and confused while they're getting all of these questions and lies thrown into their face. Just generally hurt from the disappearance. But you got to go through the motions. Like, it's a tough investigation all around. Their investigation would lead them to the former address of John Couey. When the police arrived, they discovered Couey no longer lived there. He had also failed to inform his parole officer and update his address in the registry. Adding to the long list of convictions for burglary and lewdness with a child under 5. Couey had a warrant out for his arrest. The cops checked next of kin and found their way over to his sister's house. It was in the same neighborhood that Jessica lived in. They would ask to speak with John. His sister would confirm that he lived there, but she didn't know where he was at the moment. They could only gain a slight peek into the home. Little did they know, they were so close to Jessica, she could hear them, but was too scared to call out.
Interesting that he went to his sister's house.
Well, of course they always run back to whoever will fucking enable them.
Right, but it sounded like his mom put a stop to that and took his
This is his
away.
older sister from the first marriage.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. He and his sister Dorothy were from the first marriage, and then his mom got remarried and had...
And that's who she took them away from.
Yeah.
Okay. We can continue.
Yes.
Sadly.
John caught wind that he was a person of interest in the disappearance of Jessica Lunsford. He would pack a bag and flee, using money for a bus ticket that was given to him by his niece.
Another person that should be prosecuted?
I don't think that she knew that he was fleeing the police, just that he was asking for a bus ticket to get out of town.
Okay.
Who knows? The cops would come by again, but he was already gone. This would make them even more suspicious and gave them the cause to put out a bolo on him. He would later be discovered at a homeless shelter. John was brought in and questioned about Jessica, where he would deny knowing the girl existed before ever seeing her on the news. On March 12, a few weeks after Jessica had gone missing, a warrant to search John's sister's trailer was obtained. The cops would find bloodstains on his mattress that would be tested against Jessica's, and it was confirmed to be hers. John was immediately arrested and charged for the abduction and murder of Jessica Lunsford. Only 9 years old. Has a history with molesting children. Okay. It wouldn't take a long time for John to confess. On March 18, 2005, he would tell the police that he only intended to rob Mark's house, but that Jessica awoke in the night. As she had seen his face, and him wanting to avoid jail, the only logical thing for him to do was to take her with him. He couldn't leave any witnesses behind. He took her to his sister's trailer, where he immediately raped her. Exhausted from his evil, he would instruct Jessica to stay in his bed and be quiet, or something bad would happen to her. Now she's 9 and has just been raped. So of course she's just going to do as she's told. She does not want to be hurt again. Yeah. He says something worse will happen. What could be worse than what was just done to her? She can't even imagine. So she's quiet, just laying there in shock. The next morning, John rapes her again. Not wanting to be late for work, he forces Jessica into his closet. This poor baby, afraid of the dark, is left alone after the worst trauma I can think of. Just a scream away from being saved, but the darkness has stolen her voice. John would go on to say that when he got home and heard the cops were asking about him, he quickly planned to escape. He got money from his niece and packed a bag. But what to do with the girl? She was the reason for this whole mess. Because he couldn't just help himself. He needed money, needed to rob it. Little girl saw him. Of course he's got to take her and rape her.
Yeah.
Couldn't. What was he supposed to do?
Kill himself.
He told Jessica that he was going to take her home, but she couldn't see the pathway there, and instructed her to step into 2 large black garbage bags. He promised her that he wasn't going to hurt her and that it was time to go home. Jessica climbed into the bags, terrified and hopeful that she would be reunited with her father, saved from this nasty devil that was John Couey. And what a piece of parasitic shit, trash, scum. What he did instead was dig a 3-foot deep hole and bury Jessica Lunsford alive. In one account, it is said that the police tent was set up as a headquarters for the search party and was blocking the view of John Couey burying her alive. I don't know how true that is.
Well, I hope it's not.
I hope it's not, because that's just the fucking tragic irony of it all.
Yeah.
But as she was being sought for. Later during the autopsy, the coroner would note that Jessica had managed to tear small holes into the bag as she desperately tried to escape, evidenced by the plastic beneath her fingernails. She would only have survived for about 3 minutes before running out of oxygen. She lay there tortured and abandoned by evil for 3 days. 3 minutes in a dark hole pressing on you after you've been raped twice.
Yeah. She
was alone and cold in a makeshift grave, thanks to the fucking lowlife asswipe that should have been exiled or shot the first time he was caught sneaking into young girls' rooms.
Yeah.
Despite Couey giving his confession of his own free will, the judge originally deemed his confession inadmissible in trial, stating that he confessed before having legal counsel present. Fortunately, this was awarded that all evidence discovered from the confession would be admissible at trial.
Good.
Even the incriminating statements John made while in jail to investigators. They did everything and anything they could to convict this motherfucker.
As they should.
The trial was held in Miami, since they couldn't find an impartial jury in Homosassa. Sorry if I mispronounced that.
Legal teams have been trying to use something called neuroscience, science of the brain, to explain behavior. But understanding why someone did something is different from excusing what they did. And that difference will be the basis for the jury's recommendation for punishment in this case.
It is a horrible reality.
The jury heard plenty of emotional testimony from friends and neighbors of Jessica Lunsford's family. Lives ripped apart by a terrible crime. 9-year-old Jessica was abducted from her Florida bedroom, raped, murdered, and buried in plastic bags found outside a trailer where John Couey had been living. Last week, Couey was convicted of murder. Now the question, should Couey be put to death? His lawyers have turned to science to argue that his brain is abnormal, leading to uncontrolled sexual urges and aggression. In the courtroom, Couey could be seen drawing pictures, childlike, as his life hangs in the balance.
The only shot they have is to, in effect, the defense put his brain on trial.
The defense wants to show that this picture is a roadmap to his dark reality, that he committed these heinous crimes because of his brain. Experts say while brain scans may be useful, the science, unlike DNA or fingerprint evidence, is still new.
Neurobiology doesn't yet support being able to make precise inferences from a scan to somebody's responsibility.
If John Couey, given the horrible nature of this crime, doesn't get the death penalty because of brain scans, then you're going to be seeing a lot of brain scans and a whole lot of mental impairment discussions in every capital case from now on.
And it should be remembered, if it were that easy to prove that John Couey didn't know what he was doing, then he would have been found not guilty at trial. Of course, he was convicted. This is the sentencing phase, but it should be noted this type of evidence is occurring more and more in sentencing, and a lot of juries are persuaded by
On March 7th, 2007, almost exactly 2 years after her death by live burial, John Couey was found guilty on first-degree murder for kidnapping, or for child abduction, assault, and battery on any person, burglary, and capital sexual battery. He was sentenced to death, but this lucky fuck would avoid serving his dues to society by passing of natural causes on September 30th of 2009, which is a fucking shame because I would have loved to see the needle go in his arm.
100%.
The harrowing case of Jessica Lunsford would lead to the Jessica Lunsford Act. This legislation would enact more stringent tracking of released sex offenders, requiring tighter restrictions, such as electronic tracking devices. Sorry, this is like our 3rd episode.
It is.
Getting a little dry. Such as electronic tracking devices and increased prison sentence. This is the bullshit reactive society that we are. So divided on trivial bullshit, but we can't agree on what really matters.
At least it brought attention to something that needed
It did.
changing.
Brought about change.
Yes.
Small blessings.
It's terrible that happened. Absolutely disgusting. Like, it is disgusting, but at least change happened.
Well, that's all she wrote, folks.
I am going to skip a sip of stupidity today. Does not feel right for this episode.
No.
I think this is heavy enough as it is.
Sorry.
I'm
We're just
just
going to have to
saying,
end
not
out
this
on
one.
the go hug your kids.
Yep,
Go
love
hug
everybody.
your siblings.
If you want to show us some love, follow us on all the other normal stuff. Don't you know, at everything else.
Like, share, subscribe. Leave a review. That really helps.
Yeah, boost
A rate and a
our
review.
stuff. Well, go hug your kids.
And don't forget to lock your doors.
Especially on this shit.
Yeah.